Hello everyone, how you doing? So one of you has asked me if I could talk about Democritus, so let's do that. Democritus, whose name translates into chosen by the people, was a pre-Socratic philosopher. Born in 460 BC, he is mostly remembered for his atomism, as well as several achievements in sciences like astronomy and geometry. But let's start from the beginning and cover his life first. Democritus was born in Abdera in Thrace around 460 BC. It should be noted that he seems to have had quite wealthy parents, which meant he had quite much money himself. He spent most of the money as well as his time traveling around the world. In fact, he traveled so much that Democritus claimed that there was no other amongst his contemporaries who has seen as many countries, made greater journeys, or has met as many scholars as himself. Some historians even believe that Democritus has gone as far as India or Ethiopia on his travels. Democritus' journeys were almost exclusively fueled by his thirst for knowledge, as his major goal in life was to understand as much of the world as humanly possible. Democritus became known as the laughing philosopher, first of all because he himself stated that knowledge would lead to a certain inner peace and to a view of the world that allows you to view it in a less serious manner. The second reason was that Democritus seemed to have never shied away from laughing at ignorant folks for their foolishness. It is important to mention that second reason behind him always laughing, because it can help us understand Democritus' character a little better. Besides the fact that he was probably one of the most intelligent men alive during his time, he stated himself that there was no one more intelligent than him, and no one who has traveled more, no one who has met more scholars, etc. All of his statements, combined with the fact that he laughed at people who didn't know any better, paint a picture of a very intelligent but also quite arrogant man, at least if you ask me. However, maybe it really was just his philosophy, travels and knowledge, which made him an all-around happy guy. That is not for me to decide. In this case, however, you can definitely argue that laughter, no matter the source, seems to have been the best medicine, as Democritus died in the year 370 BC, aged 90 years old, which is insane, especially considering the time period he lived in. But let's talk about the philosophical opinion of the laughing philosopher. Democritus is mostly known for the atomistic theory of the universe. I'd like to mention that some people believe he invented the theory, but it was actually invented, or rather first hypothesized, by his friend and mentor Leucippus. But let's take a look at atomism. Atomism was Democritus' belief that everything in the universe is made out of atoms, with space in between the atoms. The atoms are infinite, indestructible, and always in motion, and make up everything that exists in the universe. What kind of matter it is simply dictated by the shape, size, and arrangements of the atoms that make up the matter. For example, many atoms, which are packed very tightly, can make up a dense material, while very few, only loosely connected atoms can make up a gas or liquid. It is very surprising how close Democritus was with this concept to how we understand matter in modern sciences. And that leads us to a very interesting question. How did he know? I mean, in ancient Greece, people did not nearly have enough evidence to put forth such a claim. Or did they? Well, at least Democritus thought so. He based his theory on the fact that everything decays into smaller pieces of itself until there's nothing left of the original object. The main object becoming smaller and smaller has led him to believe that this must be a finite process, meaning that there must be something that cannot decay, and he used the term atomos to describe it. What is important to note in Democritus' atomistic theory is that he attributed certain shapes of atoms with different objects. For example, salt atoms would be sharp and pointy because the salt itself becomes that way, while water atoms need to be shifting in their form or only loosely connected to each other, which is how Democritus explained the different compositions of materials. In the ethics field of philosophy, it seems that Democritus, true to his name, promoted the idea that men should be good not only for themselves, but for the society they live in, and that goodness has everything to do with discipline and self-control and barely anything with human nature. Those who take pleasure from the disasters of their neighbors fail to understand that their fortunes are tied to the society in which they live, and they rob themselves of any joy of their own. Now, even though atomism is what Democritus is mostly known for, would he even be an ancient Greek philosopher without also being a pioneer in geometry and mathematics? Possibly, yes. But he still was. He is said to be one of the first people that made certain geometrical observation, even though he didn't put forth any evidence for it, which is kind of weird. His astronomic view is interesting as well, as he thought that the universe is, of course, a product of atoms colliding with each other and forming different worlds. Democritus also wrote a work about biology and the origin of society, describing how men were wild before and became more civilized over time. Now, what else is there to say about the laughing philosopher? Well, he definitely was one of the most knowledgeable people in his time period and a forerunner for many ideas, and with his atomism, physics in particular. And even though he, as many atomists did, not only hold but also defend the position that the Earth is flat, he is undoubtedly an important milestone for Western philosophy and the pursuit of knowledge of mankind. What do you think about Democritus? Feel free to write it in the comments down below or leave some suggestions there what I should talk about next. Until then, may the gods be with you, and I see you next time. Goodbye.